Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's Q&A session on the topic of how to have a terrific online contest. My name is Linda Rogers, and I am your contest chair for this fiscal year for District 14. Other contest team members are J.D. Dirkschneider, Laura Olson, Joanne Sheets, Trina Mackey, and Debbie Thompson. On behalf of the entire team, thank you for coming to today's Q&A session. Today's session is being recorded, so I am going to read the District 14 video and audio release statement in its full. By attending this meeting, training, event, I consent and authorize District 14 to copyright, use, and publish any of the images in any format, photographs, videos, etc., taken of me. I understand these images may be used for a variety of purposes and may appear on the District 14 website, social media, promotional materials, or any other media. Some of you have already attended other Q&As, but I want to quickly go over the fact that there will be two types of speech contests done this year in District 14. The first is table topics, the second international. For table topics, the timing will be that the clubs need to identify their contestants by the end of October. Area level contests take place in November. Division level contests take place in December, or you could wait until March and combine the table topics division level with the international division level contest. The table topics contest will go all the way to the district level and take place on Friday, April 28th at the annual conference for District 14. Our second speech contest this year is international. The timing will be similar to what's been done in the past. Clubs need to identify their contestants by the end of January. Areas hold their contest in February, divisions in March. And then, of course, there will be the district level contest on Saturday, April 29th at the annual conference for District 14. Now, I also want to quickly talk about the two-step speech contest training approach being used this year. First, watch the 6 training videos that will be on the District 14 Trainings YouTube channel. And then come to a Q&A session to get any of the questions that you had after watching those training modules answered. Those Q&A sessions will be held on the 3rd Saturday and the 3rd Wednesdays of selected months. This is the last one for the month of September. There will be some in the month of October. Going forward from there, we haven't nailed down those dates yet, but do come, watch the videos, come to the Q&A sessions. All right, now today is the Q&A session for the module, How to Have a Terrific Online Contest. And when you registered, you were asked a question. If you crossed your heart and hoped to die, that you were going to watch the video before you came. So this is what we think that you have done. Before we get started with your questions, I'm going to turn this over to Toastmaster Debbie Thompson, who's going to run some polls to find out where we really stand on some of these topics. Toastmaster Thompson. You are muted.
I'm so sorry. You think after 2 years I'd get that right. The first poll I will be launching. How knowledgeable are you about speech contests in general? So we've got several answers here. If you would answer one of those, I am an expert. Fairly comfortable, average, not so good. What is a speech contest? So I'll give you just a second to answer those. It looks like we've got average. Oh, let me share results. Can everyone see? We've got average and not so good. All right, so thank you all for that. Let me launch the second poll for everyone. Our second poll is, now how knowledgeable are you about online speech contests? A totally different animal. You would answer, I'm an expert, I'm fairly knowledgeable, average, not so good. Or you can hold them online, how's that even possible? All right, so we've got I'll go ahead and end this poll and share those results. We've got about the same sentiment here, average and not so good. And we have one final poll for everyone. Let's launch that. This is a two-part question. Two questions. Have you ever organized an online speech contest? Yes or no? And question number two, have you ever served in a contest role or supporting role, i.e. Zoom Master, for an online speech contest? So answer yes or no for those. And interesting results we have here. No, we have not. We have not organized and we have not participated. So this is a good crowd for learning today. Linda, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Thompson. So let's go ahead and get started with your questions. Again, we had the cross my heart and hope to die, watch the video before you come, bring your questions. So I'm just going to open up the floor. What questions do people have? And in fact, since we are such a small group of only 9 people, which will fit on everybody's screen, why don't, Laura, you take my spotlight off and we can just have this conversation. Thank you. What questions do people have?
How thick is the speech contest rule book, and will it take up forever to go over it and read it?
You're talking about the speech contest best practices rule book?
There's more.
It is. Let's see. I'm going to count here. Hold on. Cover to cover, it's only 10 or 11 pages, and that includes a blank back page and not much on the first couple of pages. It will not take as long to read as the official rule book that you would use for in-person contests.
That's good to know.
I know, isn't it?
Linda, it looks like the official contest rule book is 28 pages.
Okay, thank you. And small print. Smaller print, I think, and the best practices document has some pictures on it, so that doesn't take us long to read with it too. But it is full of a plethora of useful information when you're doing your speech contest online. When we're doing a contest in person, it's so much easier to grab hold of people when you need to talk to them. You can pass them a note, you can roll your eyes, you can put your finger across your neck to say, stop what you're doing, whatever. But in an online contest, it takes more planning to be able to do that. You have to communicate in a different way. You just have to, it takes longer with some of the communications. So you have to carefully plan things in advance. Brenda Lloyd, you have a question? You just unmuted.
I do. Based on the different roles that we have to have, the timer, someone to watch the chat, for the area contest, is this just like Area 72, or are we collaborating with other areas, all areas? Like, can we pull from different areas to?
Well, however you want to do your area contest is up to you. My experience when I was a division director for 2 consecutive years, and it was entirely during the pandemic, so all of our contests were online, is we just joined forces and planned it as a division council. So my area, where my division had 4 areas in it, and we just held all 4 areas, boom, 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 in the same event. So the same 2-hour period or whatever on a Wednesday evening. And we planned it together. So we said, how many contestants do we have from area 1? How many from area 2 and 3 and 4? We did our best to find timers who were not affected by any of this and could time for all 4 areas. Judges who could judge for all 4 areas, etc. So we only had to find 1 set of contest officials and not change out for each area. And then depending, we either had 1 contest master for the entire 2 hours, or we might have had 2 contest masters, one who would kind of do the first 2 areas, one who would do the second 2 areas. And just like in an online or an in-person contest, if you only have one contestant from your area, that person still needs to compete, stay in time to still qualify for originality, from a disqualification point of view, to still make sure it's original, etc. But with just one person, as long as there's no protest and as long as they stayed in time, the judges don't even need to mark their ballots and turn them in. So we combined all, for simplicity's sake, we combined all of our areas together, and that worked out really, really well. But you could do your areas one at a time. It's just you're going to have all that planning each time for every single one.
Thank you.
Other questions? Linda Miller, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. In regards to the space, since we're on Zoom and we have to stay at a certain position because of the camera, how are the judges judging the gestures and expressions as far as body movement?
Debbie Thompson, I'm going to refer that question to you because you are all about the judges and all about this area.
Yes, Linda. So we understand that in an online contest, the judges are going to be limited in what they can see. However, it is the same designated speaking area for every contestant. So it's not like one contestant has more room than the other. And that's one of the things when you are in the contestant briefing that they should practice with you is using that speaking area and understanding how far back you can stand and how you can go from side to side and still stay in the frame. And so the judges' directions with that are understand how the contestant makes use of the designated speaking area. So it is the same area for everyone. Now, in an in-person contest, you have the option, I guess, that people can come outside of this designated speaking area. And I guess you could still come outside the designated speaking area in an online contest, but in an in-person contest, it's more about using the designated speaking area to get an advantage, because if you're in person and you have a contestant come out into the audience out of the speaking area, they may get an unfair advantage from other contestants who follow the rules because they're getting close to the audience, they're having connection with the audience, they're building rapport, and it's not fair if they do that in person versus somebody who follows the rules and stays in the area they're in. In online contest, it's not necessarily as much of an advantage to come out of the speaking area. It might be more of a distraction if somebody does something like that. But
So
they're
Debbie,
all.
Debbie,
Go ahead.
I guess what I want to address is the camera area is limited. So the judge each person will say, this is as far as you can go on your camera, to the left, to the right, and mark each of our speaking areas based on our laptop's camera.
That's right, Linda.
Okay.
What I think is best practice, and is in the best practice manual, is that the judges understand that it is limited in an online contest, that they understand they can't see your feet, for example, or they can't see your stance necessarily, but they can still see, generally it's from your waist up, they can see your hand gestures, and they understand that everybody has the same speaking area. And so that would be something in your contest practice, in your contest briefing, that you go over with all the contestants to understand, how far back you can go. And the book does say that you have an opportunity at that point to mark things. So you'll know, this is how far you can go back. This is how far you can go from side to side. So hopefully that is something you would go over in the briefing.
Okay, thank you.
But the judges do understand. There's a couple of things for the judges in the best practice, and that is, You don't judge a contestant by their lighting or their audio quality. We understand that we need to be able to hear the contestant, we need to be able to see them, but we're not judging on who has the best lighting or who has the best microphone. We don't expect contestants to go out and buy equipment to be able to be in a contest. So that's one of the limitations that is discussed in the contest briefing for the judges. And the other thing is that it is limited. The speaking area is limited. We understand that. But
So
we're
can I- go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm excited. Can I ask one more question based on what you said? I attended a contest where the audio went kind of crazy. I couldn't unmute. That's the concern I have. I could not unmute. So I had to get back in, and they said if I didn't come in at a certain time, I would be disqualified. But it wasn't because of me. It was because the contest Zoom master, whomever, wouldn't allow me to unmute. Is that a same type concept that we're going to have if you have audio problems? What happens if something happened and you lose the connection?
Well, I think this, I may go back to Linda for this because that is discussing the any kind of emergency, any kind of technical issues that we have. The chief judge is told it has some leeway as far as what happens when we have technical difficulties. Linda, do you have any other?
One of the things that's in the best practices manual is that the contest chair and the chief judge need to talk about what they're going to do during a technical difficulty type thing. And it could be that the rule book, the in-person main rule book talks about, or sorry, not that one, the best practices rule book kind of talks about giving people 30 seconds, to try to get that corrected and to continue on, but that makes it difficult for the timers to really understand when did we start to lose audio from a contestant and when does the 30 seconds really start. Other possible solutions, again, the contest chair and the contest master need to discuss this, is to allow a little bit of extra time for that contestant to get whatever resolved, but then if it's not resolved and within that time, then to actually say, okay, we're going to move you as a contestant to the end of the contestant order.
Okay.
And then when we get to you again, you start your speech from the very beginning. And go
Okay.
on.
Okay.
So
one
it just depends on what your chief judge and contest chair talk about. And the thing to remember is you want to do what's right and what's fair to people. So the same rules should apply to everybody with what you're doing.
Great. And one more thing, and I'll mute. What about
sure.
what about the backgrounds? Most of the time, you guys want us to have just like a bland background. Yeah. Are there any rules regarding background?
There's no rules from an online perspective, although they recommend that you not have a virtual background, because if you're moving around too much in the virtual background, you get kind of spotted with whatever you're doing and your lighting really changes and you might flicker and things like that. I've seen some people actually just be against a blank wall or to put up a solid piece of cloth behind them, whatever, but the judges are not to be judging your background. The idea is just more that if you have a virtual background going on, it may flicker and not be quite right and be distracting.
Okay, thank you very much.
So for instance, the background that you are in front of right now, to me looks real. And you could be either against a blank wall or you could even blur your background and just be you.
We'll put a yellow sheet back there.
There you go. That works too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Well, while you're thinking, oh, Brenda, you just unmuted.
What are some types of things that would be protested? Because it talks about it, unless there's a protest, what would a contestant?
There are three types of protest. The first is eligibility in terms of, is that speaker eligible to compete in this contest? It could be based on whether they're a paid member of a club in good standing, or it could be where they have served as a somewhere in the process, a contest official for another contest in which they are competing themselves, those sorts of things for eligibility. So that would be a first way to protest. A second way would be if the speaker's speech, if the contestant's speech is not at least 75% original. And the third one is if the contestant refers to another contestant's speech or even to that contestant by name, right, folks, even by name. So for instance, if you were in an area contest and you were speaker number 3 for that area, and you said, you know, Toastmaster Thompson said in her speech a few minutes ago, I really agree with that. That would be grounds for disqualification because you referred to another speaker's speech and by name in that same contest. And then J.D. Dirkschneider's How to Have a Fabulous Contest goes into great detail about what qualifies as a protest, as does Debbie Thompson's when she talks about how to be a law-abiding judge. What you do in all of those, but basically in an online setting, if there was a protest, then after all the speakers had given their speeches and while the contest chair was interviewing the contestants, you would gather all of the judges in a breakout room to handle whatever the protest was.
Thank you.
Sure. Let me address a question that somebody else asked me who was not able to come tonight. And the question was about table topics and breakout rooms, contestants, and sergeant at arms. If you have an in-person contest, you would want 2 sergeant at arms for your table topics contest. 1 sergeant at arms would stay in the sequester room, the private room where all the contestants go, because they're all going to be asked the same table topics question or given the same table topics subject. So the first sergeant at arms would go with all contestants except the first to the contestant room and sequester them there until it's their turn to come back one by one to answer the table topics question. The second sergeant at arms actually stays in the main room where the contest is occurring. So during that 1 minute of silence after the first contestant, he can walk down to the sequester room, collect the next contestant, return with that contestant to the main room. In an online speech contest, you need 2 people who will fill those roles, but one of them for bringing people back and forth or bringing people back would be your breakout room master, who's ever handling breakout rooms in Zoom setting at least. So you would have the contest chair would open the contest, turn control over to the contest master. The contest master would then say, you know, after introducing himself and saying, let's now get started on our contest, say, we're now going to pause while all the contestants except the first is placed in the breakout room. So your breakout room Zoom master would take contestants 2, 3, 4, and 5, plus the sergeant at arms, and put them in a breakout room where those contestants would stay until they're brought back one by one for their turn to compete. And the sergeant at arms stays in that breakout room until the very end and the last contestant coming back to make sure that none of the contestants are looking at their phone and getting any information from the general audience about what the question is, for instance. So that breakout room master kind of serves as that sergeant at arms who's bringing people back and forth. After the first contestant is done answering the question during that 1 minute of silence for the judge, the breakout room master would go to the breakout room and tell the second contestant to come back to the main room. And that contestant, along with the breakout room master, would go back to the main room. The second contestant would speak. During the 1 minute of silence, the breakout room master goes over to the breakout room, tells the third contestant to come back, so on and so forth. And then when the last contestant is invited to come back, the sergeant at arms can also come back from the breakout room. But that was a question that was asked earlier. How in the world do we really do this in an online contest? Same thing would be true if you were doing an evaluation contest. where you have a test speaker and then everyone evaluates that speaker without hearing the previous speaker's evaluations. You put them in a breakout room, bring them back one by one.
Space mute current.
So Linda, we really going to be banking on the integrity of the Toastmaster not to be having their phone hidden somewhere.
That
Well,
is true.
One of the
Go
things,
ahead.
I'm sorry, one of the
No,
things
go.
the best practices recommendation it makes is that when you are in a breakout room, you have the contestants show their hands so that they would not be able to be reading the telephone, their iPhone, because they could be have it in a position where you can't see. And so that is one of the recommendations in the best practices online, that contestants actually show their hands. And I've read that in the.
Okay, and another thing, the 3 links with JD, Debbie's, and maybe yours, Linda, could those links be emailed to us or to me for convenience? Maybe others can't get in the D14.
I can do that when they're ready. Some of them are not quite ready yet for prime time, so to speak, but when they are, I will send them to you. But I'll definitely send you the link for the How to Have a Terrific Online contest.
And something about JD's beautiful something.
Right, but I'll send that to you when we're ready to truly publish it.
Oh, okay. And another thing, what are the eligibility requirements now? Are they different from the past? When I get that book, I promise you I'll read it if I couldn't get to it.
The only eligibility requirement that's changed, and correct me if I'm wrong, team, is that in order to
For international,
be a contestant for the international speech contest, you have to have earned a level 1 and a level 2 in any path if you,
or
as
be
a
a
contestant.
DTM.
Or be a DTM. Thank you, Laura. So to be a contestant in any in any contest except international, you need to be a paid member of a paid club. And for the international, they also say as a contestant, you have to have earned levels 1 and 2 in a path or be a DTM. In the past, for contestants, they've also said that you could have finished at least 6 speeches in the Competent Communication Manual, but that requirement or that eligibility requirement has been taken away for this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone, you got more questions?
This is not related to the video, but I'm dying to know because I asked this question and I didn't get an answer. So if I'm asked, I would like to know how to respond. If Toastmasters is about feedback and giving evaluations, you help you get better. Once a person, and I know the judges are hidden, that's understandable, faces, names.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that if a contestant is not successful, that they aren't given some type of feedback? I've always wanted to know that. You don't have to be seen, but just something to help them for the next time, because it could have an adverse effect and they may be discouraged to compete again. I just wondered, what would my response be if someone asked me, well, how did I do? Can I get any feedback? And I just want to know what to say. I'm good with whatever, because I don't know the rules in depth, but I just need a little insight. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Debbie Thompson to answer that one again, please.
Right. I think we have to remember that this is a contest. It is different than a club meeting or an area event. It's a contest, and so it is protected by a lot of confidential information. Of course, we say the judges can't give feedback. And what I would tell someone is if they really want feedback, to have some of their friends who are not officials be in the audience and get feedback from them, because it really is all the officials, all the information they have is confidential. They really are not supposed to share it. And that is just virtue of a contest. It is supposed to be something that is competition. So what I've told other people, and if as a judge, if somebody comes to me and says, please give me some feedback, I want to know what I can do better, I just have to say, I'm sorry, all of that is confidential. I cannot give you any feedback, but I would recommend they have a friend, or they have friends in their club, somebody who's not an official, to be in the audience or be on the Zoom and give them feedback that way. It's just, contest is different as a competition, and it's a lot of the process is confidential.
Gotcha.
Thank
Makes
you.
sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm going to call on JD Dirk Schneider if she doesn't have to leave at this exact moment. She dropped something in chat, wanted us to mention that for the eligibility protest, you not only need to be a paid member of a club in good standing at each point in the contest, but you also can be disqualified or have a protest if the contestant has competed in more than one area contest. As I understand it, and JD, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she just dropped off, so maybe Debbie, but you can be a member of multiple clubs. You can enter multiple contests at your club level, but you can only go further in one area. So you can't compete in area 1 and area 2 and area 3 because you are in clubs in all of those areas. Once you get to the area contest, you choose an area, and then you only go forward in that area and division and district. So you cannot compete in multiple contests at the area level and above. That would disqualify you as a contestant.
Yeah.
So if you were competing and somebody was a judge and they said, I was at a contest last week that was area level, and this same person was competing, that would disqualify you.
I could not have said it better, Linda. You can compete in as many contests, club contests as you want, but you have to choose. When you get to the area level, you can only be on one area contest.
Well, and when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because at some point, let's say you are in multiple areas, but they're under the same division. So if you won the contest for area 1 and area 2 and area 3, how is that really a contest then at the division level when you are winner, 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 plus you compete against one other person? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. All right, what other questions? Lorraine Jackson, I know that you have joined us. Do you have a question? No question is too small to be asked.
Hey, Linda, there's just so much information that I'm learning here that I think I need to just repeat these training sessions over and over again, because it's so much information. So I thank you for this. And I'm sorry that we have a limited number of members in attendance.
Oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. People have to choose what they're going to do and what they're going to attend. And I know we had some more people register, but then they had other events pop up that they said, okay, I'll watch the video again and miss this. Yeah. Well, I know that it can be more complicated to hold an online contest, but at the same time, when you hold one and don't die as part of it, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, so to speak. You can feel like you've really accomplished something by the time you are done. And a lot of different clubs and areas and divisions do their contests a little differently. I personally like to have a welcoming PowerPoint slide at the beginning with some music as our audience is coming into the main room for the contest to kind of set the tone for the meeting. And we have multiple practices beforehand to make sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. You cannot be perfect in whatever you do. There's somebody's not going to show up, somebody's going to have technical difficulties, something is going to happen. You just kind of go with the flow for whatever's happening. You do your best to make sure people are treated fairly and that they are treated the same and treated fairly at the end of the day with what's going on. You have the rule books pulled up so you can quickly search online if you have any questions. You've thought through all of the what ifs at the beginning. What if one of my Zoom master falls sick and can't come at the end of the day? You know, did you share the PowerPoint with another person just in case? Are people cross-trained for spotlighting and breakout room maneuvering, that sort of thing? Did you practice with all of that? When you did your walkthrough for your final practice, did you practice some of these things to make sure that you could really put people in the breakout room and bring them back, that you can really spotlight everybody so you can have a group interview among the contestants and the contest master? Just think of all these things. And, you know, if your first contest isn't stellar, there's always the next contest and the one after that.
Space.
I have one more question, Linda, about the Zoom Master.
Mhm.
In Toastmasters training, D14 trainings, they like have a controlled lobby that anybody just can't come in. Is that the same way we should have for the contests?
I always like to have a waiting room defined so that people show up in the waiting room and then they are let in deliberately into the main room for the contest. And this way you can control the timing of people coming into the room. If you're having an in-person contest, one of the roles of the Sergeant at Arms is to protect that entrance door so people cannot come into the room while a contestant is speaking, nor can they exit the room while the contestant is speaking. And the same sort of thing on waiting room. So whoever is doing the admittance from the waiting room would know that when someone is actually giving their speech, you do not let people into the waiting room.
Okay, that's one of the concerns. And
Yes.
another concern is, will people be able to, it won't impact me because I won't see them, but will people be able to, like, will the speaker, what would the speaker see? Will they see the gallery of people? What vision does the speaker see? Just the gallery of people, someone get up, someone's drinking a soda that might distract them. What does the
Well,
speaker see?
what we have the audience do is to turn their videos off and to turn their audio off. And then you have the Zoom master who's serving as kind of your microphone sniper, who would be responsible for making sure that people's videos and audio stay off. You can set your Zoom meeting controls so that when people come into the meeting, that their video and audio are also off. You don't admit them from the waiting room while the speaker is speaking, but when they are admitted, you can also closely monitor them to make sure audio and video are turned off. When the speaker is speaking, I like to have that person spotlighted along with the timer. If the contestants have asked, the timer also be spotlighted. So as a speaker in that case, what you are seeing is yourself and the timing backgrounds.
Oh,
So I think if you got comfortable speaking to yourself in the mirror at home while you're practicing your speech, this will stand you in good stead when you are at a speech contest where you have been spotlighted, because that's what you will see.
and will you have like the automatic applause or something to encourage the speaker?
We never have on that. You are kind of at a disadvantage when you're online for doing that, because you really can't see the audience and you can't hear their applause or hear their laughter if you're doing a humorous speech. So it may be, you know, you could always talk about this. It may be that your contest chair decides and the team decides that maybe because it's a humorous contest, maybe you will ask the audience to unmute at the end of the contestant's speech so they can hear applause, or maybe that they be unmuted during the contestant's speech so they could hear the laughter, with the humor. But you would have to keep a close eye on that because you'd want to immediately turn somebody's mic off if all of a sudden they were on the phone or talking to a family member in the background, or pros and
I don't mean that
cons.
way. I don't mean that way. I mean, I remember Richard Harding had where there was a mechanical applause,
Ah,
at a mechanical applause, which I thought was cool, that after the person spoke, it was a mechanical.
yeah, I have never seen that, but that is most certainly something that your contest chair and the team could talk about doing.
Oh, okay.
And if you all thought it was appropriate and you wanted to, as soon as the speaker finished and your contest master said, thank you so much for that speech, and then turn on the mechanical applause for 10 seconds and then off, and then go into the minute of silence for the judges.
Okay.
I think as long as you do exactly the same thing for all of your contestants, that
Yes.
Yes, okay.
that would be okay. Now, there is one thing about the humorous contest and the judges, because there is a category on the humorous contest guide and ballot that says audience reaction. And so in the online contest, when TI tells you that you will have your videos off and your audio off, and they say part of it is because of bandwidth, if you have a lot of people on at the same time and you have all the videos going, that it can affect bandwidth. So if that happens in the judges briefing, I always tell them, my judges, if the contest master and contest chair have decided that everybody's videos are off, their audios are off, there is no way that a judge can tell the audience reaction in that situation, that they will not consider it at all for any contestant. Now, TI says leadership can determine that. So I think it depends on how your contest is run, whether or not they do have all the videos and audios off. But if that's the case, then the judges are told not to count audience reaction for any of the contestants.
Okay, but we're not having humorists this year, correct?
Right, that is correct.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Okay, but that is true with the bandwidth. I was in on a Zoom where everybody was unmuted. It was horrible, but once everyone was muted, you got a better reception.
Yep.
Thank you.
What other questions do people have? Rodney, do you have another question?
I'm just taking all this in and trying to see how I can get this thing orchestrated, because it's a lot of moving parts. It's almost like the illustration of the conductor. And if the orchestra doesn't know their parts, you have just a disorganized mess. It won't work.
That is true. That is true.
And
I know
Linda, just to add to that though, sorry,
Uh-huh.
but remember, we've been doing online speech contests throughout the pandemic. So there's people in the district that can definitely help. So reach out to other divisions, talk to your division director, your area director to say, hey, we need some help. And we all know Toastmasters will help, and you'll get the resources that you need to make it a successful contest.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that many clubs might not have done speech contest as much during the pandemic. I know that in one of my clubs, initially the person who was tapped to plan the speech contest kind of threw up his hands and said, you can't do a speech contest online. And I said, yes, you can. And then I was asked to run it. And I said, I will be the contest master, but I'm not going to find all the roles, at all for this. And so we had 2 different speech contests, consecutive weeks, one for each type of contest that was being done that year. But it does take a lot of planning and such. But Laura is right. Area contests and division contests were done online during the pandemic. So there are people in your division who know how to do this.
I attended a couple of them. I was a contestant in 1 or 2 of them. So I am familiar with some of it. And our table topics, I know about the breakout room and stuff like that. I know about that.
So, yeah.
Just a plug for Pathways. If you have somebody as a contest chair that's doing a lot of leadership and planning, see how they can use that project in Pathways for one of the higher level projects. Because they're doing a lot of leadership and research and things like that. So make sure they can get credit.
That's
Yes.
always a good idea.
Yes. All right, what other questions? What things have those of you who have attended an online contest, what things have you questioned or wondered why things were done that way? Or perhaps even thought were not done in quite a good of way as they could have been?
Space muted.
Like I shared, the area contest, this is Linda Miller. The technology was very difficult. I don't know why, and even to this day, I have difficulty unmuting. And it was a
Mhm.
nervous wreck trying, it kept saying, if she's not back in 1 minute, okay, 40 seconds, it was a nervous wreck. But then you had to start all over again. That was a challenge, but that was new in the pandemic as well. So I'm sure we just.
Sure. Well, I know one of my first speech contests during the pandemic, one of the contestants couldn't see the timer and she went over time. And subsequently, she was a Zoom master for the next contest and she said, you need to show the timer. All the contestants said, please spotlight the timer while we're giving our speech. And so that's from henceforth, we always spotlighted the timer along with the contestant and told the timer to cover her camera so we didn't see her body. We just saw the timing backgrounds. The general one, well, you know you're going to have the timing background when you reach a color, green, yellow, or red, but there's also a Toastmasters timing background that just says timer on it. So when you cover your camera, you just see the white background with the word timer. And then when you get to the green portion, you change your background to a green, etc. But that was one of the things early on in the process where a contestant went over time because she couldn't find the timer. So we used that timing white background so the timer showed up really clearly and also spotlighted the person.
I participated as a functionary in the contest where one of the judges accidentally showed the ballot in the chat. I'm like, oh no. and the person that was helping, he could, things go wrong.
Things go wrong. And honestly, during a speech contest, stay out of chat. I remember again an early speech contest where some people came in late and we didn't quite know what we were doing. And some people came in late and they had their audio and their video on and they were going, oh, that's my son. Oh, isn't he doing a good job? And people were putting stuff in chat, with a lot of this. And I thought, this is so wrong, wrong, wrong. And going forward from that, we always had a slide at the very beginning and opening the contest after we had done the photo and video release statement because of the recording and said, keep your videos turned off, keep your audio turned off, and an audience, stay out of chat.
Good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question regarding the individual designations. In the in-house contest, we're not to put Linda Miller DTM, Linda Rogers PM3. Do we still not put the designations, just the contestant name? Just say the contestant name?
Correct. No designation, no club name, nothing. When you are the contest master announcing, you might say, it is now time for contestant 3, Linda Miller. Here is her speech title. Here is her speech title, Linda Miller. And that's all you can say.
Okay, because I was at an area contest last year where they were calling their designations.
Yeah, no, you can do the designations once you get to the interview process, because typically they will say, how long have you been in Toastmasters? What clubs do you belong to? What's your designation? But not before then.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you.
I do have a question in terms of when does a contestant know that they've been disqualified? And what kind of protest or when can they protest the disqualification?
All right, Debbie Thompson, I'm going to turn that over to you again. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so, excuse me, would you just repeat that, Lauren? I'm sorry. So
A contestant has been disqualified for whatever reason other than timing. That I think that's black and white. How
Okay.
do they know they've been disqualified and how can they protest their disqualification?
Okay, if there's a protest for originality or a protest for referring to someone else's speech, then there is a process that you have to go through, and you can't protest a protest.
Mhm.
The decision of the judges, voting judges, is final. So what happens when when you have a protest is that all of the voting judges and the chief judge and the team, I believe the contest chair, go into a breakout room for a confidential discussion. The contestant who the protest is against, say it's against originality, has the opportunity, anytime they might be disqualified, they have the opportunity to be heard. So they would go into the breakout room as well. That's when the chief judge would explain why everyone's there, what the protest is. The contestant has an opportunity to give their side, and then the judges vote. It takes a majority vote in order to disqualify someone, but once that vote is majority, their word is final. The voting judges is final. And so they would not be able to come back and say, well, I protest that protest. They do have the opportunity, as I said, to be heard by the voting judges. And because the referencing someone else is a fairly new rule, I've never actually been in any of those protests. So I would imagine it's exactly the same thing, though, that you would have the voting judges in a breakout room, you would have the contestant be able to come in, you would talk about it. And that's pretty obvious. If you talked about somebody else's speech in your speech and referenced it, I don't see how that would be a protestable either, because all the judges probably heard you do that. But again, once they vote, that vote is final, and there's no protest of appeal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Think of the word.
And when you're talking about protests, the protest should be handled after all the contestants have spoken. You know, if you have 8 contestants and somebody is protesting contestant number 3 for originality, you should not come to a screeching halt in the contest while the protest against candidate 3 or contestant 3 is handled. You just keep on going through all 8 of your contestants, and then after that's done, then you gather the judges together to handle any protest, because there might have been a protest against candidate 7 or something too. You never know.
But if you were contestant number 3 and they protested against you.
You would know, you mean, you
Okay.
would be informed.
Okay. Got it.
In
You
the
would be
final
informed in
process.
time,
Yeah.
in the
in
process, right?
In the process, you would be informed.
Right.
You would have an opportunity to come in and say your piece for it.
Yes.
If there's 2, then you would have one session with one of the contestants and then another private session with the other contestant and settle it that way. But yeah.
Right.
The
Right.
other thing is there are only certain people who can put up a protest or lodge a protest, and that is the voting judges and the contestants. So an audience member can't protest originality. Just the judges and the voting judges and the contestants. So not everybody can protest, but that may be something you go over in your briefing. The chief judge will tell you how they want you to let them know there's a protest. It may be that you write it on your ballot. It may be that you have a text group or something like that. You'll need to let the chief judge or the contest master know there's a protest.
Thank you.
Does that
Thank you.
make sense?
Makes sense.
And meanwhile, if there are protests and the judges are handling that protest, your contest master is on stage interviewing the contestants, maybe drawing out the interviews, maybe doing table topics with the audience, maybe saying, let's have a 15-minute break, whatever you need. The contest chair and the chief judge need to talk about in advance what's going to be going on if there are any protests, so that you can still have the front-facing portion, so to speak, of your contest look like it's just going on normally, that nobody knows there's all this discussion behind the scenes. Same thing is true when you're talking about an online or an in-person contest is online, but you have to talk about it for an online contest too. What other questions? Jen Moore, I know just you are here too. Do you have any questions? She may have stepped away from her device. Going once, going twice. All right, sold. I think we are done if there are no more questions. Thank you so much, Linda.
I do want to say, Linda and the staff, this was a very, very good idea to the Q&A sessions. This is very good. I learned a lot.
Good. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
attending.
So did I.
Yeah, I did too. And also, will these training sessions be on the District 4 YouTube or Facebook page?
That's our intent. We are recording and our intent is to put the Q&A sessions out on the District 14 YouTube page. Exactly how long it will take to get them there is unclear, but that is our intent. Well, you know, it's also new in that process. You know, you're doing what you think is something you need to do, and then all of a sudden something else goes awry or whatever. So it's all a learning curve for us. But the intention is to have the 6 pre-recorded training videos out on the YouTube channel, and then to also record the Q&A sessions and have those out on the channel too.
Just don't forget to send me the link so I can read the document.
I've got that on my notes. I sure will.
Okay. Boy, you guys did a great job. Great
Okay,
job.
well, I'm just going to quickly share my screen again for a quick reminder.
The account owner can also watch this recording.
As I just mentioned, do watch when we have them out, all of them out there, the 6 contest training modules at your convenience, and then you can attend the Q&A sessions, which will be on 3rd Wednesday and 3rd Saturday of selected months. And then just as a reminder for our dates, October starts the club contest for table topics, and January starts the club contest for international. Thank you so much for coming today. And you can always reach out to any of us to ask questions that might come up since then. Just email us or come to another Q&A session.